Hello folks and welcome to our game with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as always by Michael Verney. We've had a big weekend of football. Club stuff is kicking off as well, and a reminder, we're brought to you by OurGaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. By the way, we're often talking to you about some of the club fundraisers that we're doing. We've got one coming up in O'Loughlin Gales on Thursday this week, so that'll be absolutely brilliant. Cyril Farrell, Eddie Brennan, Niall Moore, and a couple of club legends and the likes of Brian Hogan, Brian Dowling, who's just stepped down as the Kilkenny Camogie manager, and also Mark Bergen, who of course is a stalwart for the club there as well. Michael, looking forward to that.
Yeah, should be a belter. It's not been recorded, so it'll be as loose as you can get. And whatever happens in the room will stay in the room. But looking forward to it now. Should be a great night. Raising funds for the O'Loughlin Club. They have 2 tickets for the All Ireland final up for raffle as well, and they've a signed Kilkenny jersey that I'd nearly buy so that you could wear to the Tipperary County final should they win the All Ireland.
Well, do you know what? Actually, over the weekend, Upperchurch beat was it Loughmore? I think Upperchurch beat Loughmore. So obviously, Upperchurch had the Kilkenny colours. If Upperchurch gets to the county final, like it's sort of just sneak in as Maria and Upperchurch because they have the same black and amber stripes. So that means they're into I think the semi-final or the mid-final now. And if they won the division, that means that it doesn't matter if they even win their group in the county championship, they'll be guaranteed a knockout place. So, that gives me a small bit of comfort at the moment. But the idea of Kilkenny winning the All-Ireland and me having to go through the forfeit of wearing a Kilkenny jersey to the Tip County final is not good.
Do you know it would be some crack if Boris got to the Tip final and you were wearing a Kilkenny jersey? Now, that would be quality.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't enjoy that either. Bursley actually lost to Killadangan. Killadangan had 13 men for the last period. Now, Burrs were down 14. But Killadangan, down a couple of points, hit the last 6 in a row and beat Bursley with 13 men, which is fair going. Billy Seymour and Sean Hayes did a fair bit of the damage late on there. I just watched it back yesterday. Hey, some choice conditions for a lot of these matches over the weekend, wasn't there, whether it's club or county?
It was biblical at times, wasn't it? Like you're looking outside. I drove in I was covering the Tailteann Cup game on Saturday, so I was in early enough. But I wanted to get somewhat close to Crow Park so that I wouldn't have to. You're literally thinking I'm going to be destroyed by the time I get up to the press box here, and I'm going to be sitting like a drowned rat up on the 7th floor with a breeze that would cut through you, coming through me, and end up with pneumonia the next day. But it worked out all right. I got a dry spell of about 10 minutes. And funnily enough, once I got in there, it was grand. And the conditions were actually fine in Croker, which can be sheltered quite well from it all, in fairness, bar in the hill. But conditions weren't too bad in there. But across the weekend, it was calf. Yeah, love it. Real equalizer, real leveler. Come into my terrain. Let's get the bit of rain. Let's get the forward's first touch, not being as knacky and as handy as it normally is. Absolutely beautiful. Now, saying that, I hate, and we played football the other night, Junior B, and we were terrible. But I hate playing football in the rain. It's a disaster. I was there. I was present, but I went to say that I was playing. That would probably be far-fetched.
Right, I presume you've got zero skill in football.
No, I wouldn't be too bad at the football. I'd be no problem saying that I'm not very skillful in Ireland at all. But I wouldn't be too bad at the football now. Like I would have scored, I'd scored a few in big championship games off the outside of the right. Do you know what I mean? It's happened. Yeah, it's happened.
Was there one too many lads trying slicers in the Monaghan Dublin game? I feel like Conor McCarthy and Kieran Hughes tried a couple of slicers when. Don't know if they were on.
Yeah, you really have to be. Even Thomas Sullivan, who's brilliant at it, tried one yesterday. Tom Sullivan didn't make the ball stopper. You have to be in the full of your head to be trying that sort of shot, especially in a big game. Not too many lads tried them in the last 10 or 15 minutes of a game. A lot more likely to try them in the first 10 or 15, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay, so Kerry beat Derry 117-115. Brilliant game. You were in at Dublin Monaghan as well. Really close for long spells. Tailteann Cup, that was won by Meath against Down. We'll go through all those games, but there's a couple of bits of news that we definitely want to catch up on. Firstly, Davy Fitzgerald, he's going to stay on. He signed a 2-year deal last year with the option of a 3rd year. So he is going to stay there. So that's big news anyway you like it. And the interesting thing is that he's with Doon in County Limerick at the moment. So it's going to be a tough job to be in 2 places at the one time to scope out what's happening in Waterford as well as managing within Limerick. But I suppose he wouldn't be the first one to do it either. But I'd say one way or another, whether you're happy with him there or not as a Waterford person, the fact that the thing is done and it's not going to drag on for the rest of the year, I think it's good to just get the business done.
Oh, you don't want to drag it on for a couple of months, and it gets really, really messy. And then just on the off chance that you do lose a manager, and then you're 6 weeks to 2 months trying to get another manager, he's there in situ. I do think the Tipperary game and the performance and the result, probably, like, I don't know, I think it was definitely 50-50 before then. But they delivered a fair performance there. Hopefully, I like watching Waterford play generally, because they're one of these kind of swashbuckling sides. They can kind of produce anything on a given day. But I just hate seeing them being restricted. I didn't feel they were restricted against Tip. I thought they brought the pain to Tip that day. They played 2 inside, really, really deep, and they were, that was the Waterford side that we, the way Waterford played it, we like to see them play. So hopefully to be a bit more of that. Just feel like things at times were a bit too complicated last year. So hopefully it'll be nothing's orthodox now, but it'll be a little more easy on the eye, should we say? Because Waterford were not good to watch last year. And there's no point in saying any different. And games that they were involved in, maybe outside of the Limerick game, they were not good on the eye. And you can say it's a results-based business or whatever. It doesn't matter what it looks like. But I prefer to see a team playing, and if they're winning somewhat the right way and give them great games. Like people say about Limerick, it's very methodical, it's very robotic. Nearly all the brilliant games are involved in Limerick. So to me, that passes the test. So interesting to see Waterford got their win in Munster this year. Surprisingly, at the end, can they, build on that? Can they get out of a round robin that they have performed abysmally in? There's no point in saying any different.
Yeah, you're either playing winning hurling or you're playing entertaining hurling. Actually, to be honest, you can extend that onto any sport. And there are days when you play, it's generally the euphemism of you play a certain way, which is, really defensive. There are certain days when you shut up shops or whatever. But I think supporters want to see that you're building towards something. You go with some of those performances that Waterford had last year, and you're puzzled as to why a midfielder, and for example, what's his name again? The left-handed midfielder.
Darragh
Lyons. Why he's playing, and you knew that Tony Kelly was going to take him out in midfield. Why he's stuck playing cornerback. Why other lads are in other positions, Desi Hutchinson out midfield or whatever. Whereas, like, if you see that a team is set up a way where, okay, it might not work today, it might not work the next day, but we're building towards something, then I think supporters will get on board, because they're like for example, this year with Tipperary, it didn't work, right? For a finish, as in it came off the rails or whatever way you want to say it, energy or whatever. But I look at it and I'm like, okay, didn't get all the results we wanted. The performance against Waterford, absolutely atrocious. The performance against Galway, terrible. But I can see what Tipperary are trying to do. It didn't work this year. And same as Davy with Waterford, you're a year in, but I can see where this could go. And I think Waterford supporters may not feel the exact same way, but at least against Tip, they got a sign.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but they got a sign from the Tip game, probably because they played completely differently and set up completely differently than they had all year. So hopefully that's a sign of things to come, and we won't kind of see. It is quite negative. There's no point in saying any different. It's not good on the eye. And I think supporters did not talk with their feet this year. They did not go to games. They did not support Waterford. Maybe that's partly to do with the way that they play. I think if you know it's going to be turgid enough most days, maybe it's kind of difficult. Maybe particularly families aren't going to stump up the bunts to go and see something like that mightn't be particularly entertaining. But hopefully that last performance against Tip is a sign of different things to come maybe next year.
Yeah, and I take no pleasure in saying it, but after the end of the 2022 season, I didn't feel that Tipperary were going in the right direction under Colin Bonner. So I kind of felt the change was needed swiftly. And as I said, I take no pleasure in saying it, but you just have to call it out at times. So at least for Davy, he got a bit of a change in the way that they performed against Tipperary. Whatever about what Tipperary produced on the day, Waterford were very good. And it feels like, whether it's a case, Michael Ryan, former manager, we had him on before, that he needs to stop looking at it and thinking it's a game of PlayStation, I think was the way he put it. But if he can just sort of nail down a little bit more of a sort of a, I wouldn't say orthodox, but just less unorthodox team, I think he could get supporters on side very quickly.
No, I agree with you. I think the comment in from Colin Lyons blind spots is interesting here. Kilkenny lost that Ireland final last year. Not a single fan had a bad word to say. They played brilliantly. Rather lose that way than the way Davy plays. Like, yeah, they conceded what did they scored 226 and lost in All Ireland, which is mad kind of to think of it. But they played great stuff and threw it down to the All Ireland champions. Not maybe it wasn't a real cagey affair where they're, you know, lumping a whole heap of men behind the ball and just trying to completely stifle them, and it's a terrible spectacle. They tried to go and win playing high energy stuff, and that's what I think. And it's probably a little bit of a segue into the Derry game. Like, Derry and Kerry was so good yesterday because Derry were brave and took risks. Now, they just didn't convert when they really needed to. But like, I wasn't really expecting that. I don't know what you were expecting going into that game. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting the shackles to be off completely and for them to just at times leave so much space in front of Clifford and Christy McKaig, but say, we're going to try and win it on the scoreboard up the far end. We're going to be really brave and we're going to try and put up a massive score. Like, they scored 1-6 in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. They scored 1-15 yesterday. They could have easily ended up with 3-16, 3-17. And had they got another goal on the board, they probably would have won the game. But I don't think too many Derry people were leaving Croke Park yesterday saying, oh, we should have parked another two men behind the ball. Do you know what I mean? I think they'd be very happy with how they played and the spectacle that they played into, albeit they didn't get the result that they wanted.
So I credit Kerry as well in that they didn't sit a load of men behind the ball. And again, actually, this extends back to playing a certain way on a certain day. You go back to 2014 when Kerry won the All-Ireland against Donegal in the final. Kerry were brutal to watch. So were Donegal.
Yeah.
You know, it was awful stuff. But Kerry won, as you know, playing that certain way. And James O'Donoghue ended up winning Footballer of the Year. And even though he barely touched the ball in the final, he was credited for bringing Neil McGee out from the square or whatever to open up opportunities for other people. So I give Kerry, you know, they didn't exactly kind of sit sweepers back, which meant that Derry also felt that they could push up. So I thought both teams added to a brilliant spectacle. But just back to the All-Ireland final, actually, as soon as you mentioned it there, John Keenan's going to referee the match.
Yes.
He, of course, refereed the Munster final last year between Clare and Limerick. John Keenan's going to swallow the whistle. And he's just going to blow it 4 times to start and end each half, and otherwise he's going to forget about it. So
Hopefully so.
There's other great refs out there, so it's no slight on any other referee, but I think we're all happy enough to see John Keenan get a shout.
Yeah, well, he didn't get another match after the Munster final last year, widely lauded as one of the greatest games of all time. I spoke to him maybe last November for a piece for the Indo, and he was quietly disgruntled. But I think he kept his cards kind of, I'd say he didn't say exactly what he wanted to say to me now. He said enough, but I'd say he didn't say exactly what he wanted to say to me because he knew there was another year. It's like, you know, you're not, if you know X is back as manager next year and he didn't play this year, you're not going to do an interview and slate him and make sure you're on the bench for all next year. But he played the game somewhat, I'd say. And like, this is the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. I think he becomes the 3rd Wicklow man to referee Senior Hurling Championship final. And yeah, I think it's the right man for the job, and I hope it's the John Keenan of the Munster final in 2022 and not maybe the more sanitized John Keenan of 2023, but because he's done everything he's needed to get to the big dance. He's at the big dance now. Keep that. I wouldn't even go. Don't even have the whistle in your mouth throughout the game like referees do. Just have it hanging down around the neck. Leave it dangling. Blow for the real obvious freeze and let the rest of it go.
But he's retiring after this one, isn't he?
Yeah, well, it's forced to retire. This ageist rule within the GAA where once you turn 50, you can't referee inter-county games anymore. Said it before and I'll say it again. I think it's absolutely bonkers. It makes no sense. In an era where we're struggling for referees, we're pushing some of the best ones out the door. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I did an RTE segment, I think at the start of the year, or do you know what? I think it was a New Year's sort of special. It was like the Sunday Sport. And one of my 3 wishes for the year was that John Keenan gets to referee every game. He private messaged me afterwards saying, thanks very much for that. He said he was driving along in the car and he got some shock when I came out with this spiel live on the radio. But look, I think it's brilliant. He can ref it whatever way he likes because there's no consequence. He's obviously going to be retiring due to age, as you're saying there. So, like, I think that's brilliant, and it bodes for absolute mayhem in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, does it potentially suit Limerick more as well, given how robust they are, how, you know, you're looking at the tackle sometimes and you're thinking if there's a certain type of referee, and this is not me Limerick bashing at all, they are right on the edge. Certain referees will let them go. I think James Owens blew a lot in the first 25 minutes of the semi-final. I think he didn't blow much thereafter. The tackles were the same thereafter, but he wasn't blowing. So Keenan usually, like, it's funny, referees that let the game go, like, good, hard, physical, kind of honest hits, no problem. Even on the border, they let it go. It's amazing, though. You pull a jersey and it's free all day, every day, all day, every day. Do you know what I mean? There's certain things that they will always blow for, certain things like that, the push in the back, but that real physical kind of stuff, they will generally let go, as long as it's not the other side of the line. And I expect it to be, expect it to be a fairly bruising affair. And I've probably said that it would suit Limerick more. Like, Kilkenny down through the years have always been one of the most physical teams. Whether this Kilkenny team, how they match up physically against Limerick, as in if it gets really down and dirty. Last year's All-Ireland final was an open game. That'll be interesting to see whether they can maybe up the physical stakes a bit more.
Yeah, they're definitely not a small team, but the Kilkenny team today is not the same size as the Kilkenny team of the 08 era. And actually, we're going to be doing picking our best 15 of Kilkenny then versus Limerick now. So that's going to be skin and hair flying between the two of us. Just go through a couple of other bits of news as well before we start talking about the football. Brian Dowling, he stepped down as the Kilkenny Camogie manager. And obviously, after losing 3 All-Ireland finals in a row, he came in and helped them get over the line. So that was a great tenure for him. Probably didn't happen for them so much this year, but of course, Miriam Walsh being out was a huge loss, and they only lost by a point to Cork in the quarter-final. David Herity, he stepped down as Kildare Hurling manager. What do you make of that? I mean, it's been a yo-yo couple of years, and like, I had David with Kula, and I think he's an exceptional coach, but I'm sure he'd be a little bit disappointed there. But yeah, I suppose like it's like anything. Maybe from his point of view, they'd gone up, they'd gone down, they'd showed great signs. This year didn't go so well, so maybe he felt that it was kind of at the end of the road.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, that they put a lot of stock in the league this year and got to the league final. Obviously, we're very, very close to being promoted to Division 1. Didn't win a game thereafter in the McDonagh, and it's just disappointing, as you said. It has been yo-yo. Unfortunately, they're back where he took them over. They're back in the Christie Ring, having won the Christie Ring twice. And it just kind of, Kildare example probably just further highlights how big of a gap there is between tiers, different stages in hurling. Like, you go from, the All-Ireland level to the McDonagh level, and it's such a big gap, as Tipperary versus Offaly show. You go from the McDonagh to the Christie Ring, and it's such a big gap as well, as Kildare have probably shown in recent years. And you go down through the other tiers as well, it's the same. I don't think David will be idle anyway. I think he's kind of getting involved even at schools level in Kilkenny and that as well. So I think he'll be kept pretty busy. By all accounts, a very, very good manager, very good coach. The Kildare lads that speak very highly of him. He'd just be probably disappointed that they are back where he started. They are now. But if you chat to Brian Byrne or any of those lads there, they'll all have a lot of good things to say about him.
I found, like, as soon as he came in with Kula, was it 2019 or 20? I can't remember which year, but whichever year he came in, I think it was 20 actually. Like, he was in with the tactic sport straight away, which is, all teams are doing at this stage. But like, straight away, he was open to having a little conversation, to sort of teasing things out and all that kind of stuff. So I'd say, and assuming that he's still doing that, players would like that. The fact that he's not just willing to come in and lay down the law, he's willing to kind of chat it through and tease out the ideas. So I thought that was really good. A 15-year-old girl was awarded almost 40,000 euros from a scar sustained, after being hit with an untaped hurley. I just wonder, I mean, look, without talking about the ins and outs of the case, you just wonder, like, with how easy it is to pick up injuries in GAA and the compo culture that we have in Ireland, where this will go in the future. It's actually very difficult to say too much about it.
I would say there's GAA clubs the length and breadth of the country looking at that story and like putting their hands over their eyes, thinking, what's our insurance premium going to be next year? It's already through the roof to insure all of your teams and get the players insurance at club level. Incidents like this are probably only going to make it even higher. Like, it does come back to me, it comes back to like a really bizarre rule within camogie that you have to have, tape over your plate. I just think it's absolutely mad. There's some like, they've gone closer in recent years to, I would say, equality in terms of rules between camogie and hurling. Like, there's no difference between the two games realistically. Like, why in camogie would you have to have tape over your plate? To me, I just think that's bizarre. Like, and I in all my years playing hurling, I don't know if I've ever really got a belt or anything like that, or something in any way bad from from the plate on a hurl or anything like that, no matter where you get clipped, whether it was the hand or the leg or whatever. But I just think I think if they took that out of the rules anyway, straight away, it was somebody breaking the rules on the pitch, and it was left open to a compensation claim, and that's kind of what's happened without going into the gory details of it.
Do you call it a plate? Like, I'd call it a hoop, and I'd hear it being referred to as a band in a lot of other places. Would you call it a plate?
Plate, yeah. I call it a plate, yeah. Different terminology for different. When I be chatting at any of the boys that be making hurls, it would usually be a hoop or a band, but I'd always call it a plate. I'd always say 2 plates, yeah.
All right, okay. And I remember growing up when the father was making hurleys, he'd have to put the like a huge kind of ring or whatever you want to call it of the hoops into the fire to let it sort of soften up a little bit, and then he could make hoops out of it. I see a few other people here saying it's a band, says Colin Lyons Blind Spot. Hoop myself, says Tailteann GAA. I'd be a hoop man all day.
I bet you would.
By the way, just in terms of like compensation and all that kind of stuff, and we see it there with the ladies GAA, ladies camogie, or sorry, ladies football, I should say, talking recently about where we're going in terms of like people who are identifying as female going in playing the sports, and they'd be welcomed and all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, you're going to get something on the back of that, and an injury from somebody who's physically more developed in a certain way than somebody else. And because of the way the hate speech laws are coming in Ireland, where saying the wrong thing could get you jail for 5 years for an undefined law, it's very, very, it's kind of scary actually the way that's going to be in a couple of years' time. Again, we won't say too much more about that, but I would be very concerned about where that's going.
It's only a matter of time before that has consequences lead to something else. You know what I mean? So I'd agree with you, but just on that case in particular, so we don't know exactly how bad the injury was or the severity of it. But I'd say there was a lot of GA clubs looking at that and thinking we're going to be hit in the pocket with this in time. And I'd say there's a lot of insurance companies looking at that and thinking we're going to slap X percentage on for next year, and clubs are just going to have to pay for it. Like clubs are being crippled with those sort of kind of premiums already, and things like that happen is probably only going to get worse.
When's the Offaly Hurling Championship starting?
Started already. Started the week before last, yeah. Carlow's well in full flow. Kerry's well in flow. Like a lot of them are in flow at the moment as well. One thing I would say, like I know the Dublin Hurling Championship started over the weekend, and kind of just thinking it was kind of there in the background, and I got an email about all the results and whatever. Then I kind of thinking, like, it's mad and wrong, to be honest with you, that Coola were playing championship over the weekend and Conor O'Callaghan cannot play because he's playing for his county in another code, you could say, but hurling is obviously massively important to him. But he cannot play because he's an inter-county player. He cannot play club hurling for his club because he's good enough to be still playing inter-county, and Dublin are good enough to still be in the championship this time of the year. I just think it's a mad kind of a punishment. It's kind of like the under-20s not being let play senior, or guys that are good enough not being able to go back and play under-20 because they're too good. It's almost punishing guys that are good enough to play inter-county, and the fact that inter-county are still in the championship, they can't play club championship, they can't play the first couple of rounds. Probably takes the integrity of the competition into question a small bit as well, realistically. Like Coola will probably play 2 to 3 rounds without him and maybe 2 with him. That's not right either. And I'm talking about Cormac Costello as well, Lee Gannon with Whitehall, who you're involved with, obviously. And there's a handful of more names that are missing out over the weekend just because they're involved with the Dublin Senior Football Panel, which I don't think is right.
Well, like I just wonder, like, how interested is the county board in promoting that code if this is the way the fixtures have been set out. And not only that, now this is only a really irrelevant point if you're involved in a massively dual club, but the last 2.5-3 weeks right before the championship has begun, there was like 4 rounds of football league games in Dublin. So there's like I've been chatting to some managers across Dublin. They're like, well, what chance do you even have to coach your team heading into the championship? And then there's other teams that obviously are going to be without their county players who are playing football. So it just makes you wonder, where is the focus in terms of promoting hurling?
Yeah, anyway, just on that, Niall Corcoran talked about the quality aspect of it. It's very hard to get quality of coaching when you're being denied that sort of time, and you're obviously been hamstrung by numbers and stuff as well. So like, maybe it's no surprise, and maybe it does show where. Like, when does the Dublin Senior Football Championship start?
Well, the first round that I know of is the 11th of next month.
Okay, like that's, I don't know, just maybe it looks like they're playing off a lot of games in the Hurling Championship quite quickly, when, as I said, a lot of players will not be available to play for the clubs.
Yeah. So another thing then, some of the club fixtures over the weekend. Champions Causeway are out of the Kerry Championship after losing on penalties against Crotta. You wonder now, right? So a lot of the time we're talking about how there shouldn't be replays and all that. But you'd think of all championships, the Kerry Hurling Championship would have room for a replay since it's the 17th of July, and no team will have to go through to the Munster Intermediate Championship until maybe October.
Yeah, there's no rush whatsoever with this. I've less of an issue with the penalties when when you're really hamstrung for time. Like, they're knock off for time at all. There's absolutely no reason to be playing those games off as quickly as they're playing them off. Again, does look like it's been bang, bang, bang. Here, we'll try and get this played off as quickly as we possibly can. That's what it looks like from an outsider looking in, anyway.
Yeah, so the semi-finals in Kerry are going to be Kilmiley against Crotta O'Neills and Ballyduff against Lickshna. In Wexford, despite scoring 15 points, Lee Chin failed to help Fate Harriers out of relegation trouble. They lost to Oilgate Glenbrine 120 to 22 points. Harriers have to play St. Anne's and Martins in their final two games. In Tip, and I watched a few of the games over the weekend, Jake Morris scored 1-9 from play for Nina as they bet Temple Derry 224 to 216. And in the other semi-final, as I mentioned already, Kildangan, they beat Bursley 16 points to 12. Will we go on to the football, or will we talk about the two semi-finals? There's a couple of other hurling things we want to touch on, but let's talk a little bit about the football over the weekend. We'll start off with Derry against Kerry, 117 to 115. It was brilliant stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, a cracker of the game. And I actually just missed the first couple of minutes of it. I was in transit. I was listening to it on the radio, and you're thinking both teams have had a goal chance here inside 2 minutes. I'm thinking, what sort of a game is this? Derry get a goal. I think it was 33 seconds later. Kerry get a goal. It was exactly what I was not expecting. And fair, as you said earlier, fair play to Kerry. Kerry didn't play the sweeper that you normally see. Derry went fairly gung ho for it and said, we're basically going to outgun you here. And their accuracy was so good, particularly in that first half. They'd won 11 on the board at half time. And Dermot O'Connor's obviously black card was included in that time before half time and just a bit after as well. It was just a couple of chances spurned when they really, really had Kerry by the throat, and they just weren't able to really keep the foot down here when they were totally in control. Not totally in control, but they had the chances to really bury Kerry, just didn't take them. And I think that'll be the heartbreaking thing from a Derry point of view, that so many things went right. They were, as I said earlier, they were brave, they went for it, and they just didn't have maybe the accuracy to kind of force it through at the end. But a couple of injuries that they picked up in the first half, I think, probably hurt them at the end of the game. Maybe when some lads were flagging on the pitch, like is it McGrogan that kicked the point off Shawnee O'Shea? He probably would have kept O'Shea a lot quieter in the second half than he was. He thundered into the game, and obviously, David Clifford ended up with 4 from play, 1 from a mark. Just some outrageous scores. And you kind of flagged it on Thursday. Would he have to drop back the pitch a lot? He had to drop back the pitch a lot deeper than I expected him to. What a shot that is! It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's art, isn't it?
It is. It's ridiculous. It's iconic because there's no player in the history of the game that I can think of that kicks a ball like that. And so he's off the ground as he's kicking. His foot is above his 6'4" head. I actually think his momentum means that his right foot can't but be off the ground. But it's odd that when he kicks a ball, it's got this kind of sound that's a little bit different. I actually remember commenting on it before when Conor McManus was out at the international rules it was Perth or Melbourne, whatever, 2014. He had come out late, but himself and Chrissy McCaig had been playing the Ulster Football Club against each other, and then they'd share 2 plane seats beside each other on the way out. And I was watching McManus kick around in some old warm-up or training session, and it just, the noise it made anytime he hit it, and he always drove it way above the post. And Clifford is even more onto that again. It's nuts.
He doesn't get blocked down as well, generally. It's like he kind of leans back. He always, there was a point he got yesterday where McCaig was on top of him. It was on top of him, and you're looking at it as a defender and thinking, you can't really do much more here.
And also, McCaig didn't buy the couple of little jinx.
Yeah.
He didn't buy the jinx, and I was like, fair play to you there. But still, there's nothing anybody in the history of the game could have done about it.
It's gas, you know. I don't know, I see a lot of people, Philistines, I call them, saying that McKay got an absolute roasting yesterday or whatever. It wouldn't have mattered who was on him. And I thought there was a lot of 60-40, 40-60 balls even come in. McKay came out and even palmed down a good few balls away from Clifford. It was just in the big moments, I'd say, Clifford delivered. But I thought McKay had a decent game as well. And like, when you're playing the way Derry decided to play, Clifford was always going to expose some holes at different stages, no matter who he was on. There wasn't the comfort of, being double marked or being triple marked or having a sweeper in front or anything like that. They didn't play like that, so they were always going to leave it that Clifford maybe could have a big impact, and he had a massive impact, really, when the need was greatest. And even I was thinking back yesterday, and I just, like, at the end of that game, I think Derry were up in the 67th minute, and you're just thinking, Kerry are now have the ability to close out games that they wouldn't have closed out probably 12 months ago or a little over 12 months ago. That's just what beating Dublin with a clutch free at the end, holding on in an All-Ireland final against Galway. That's kind of what it does to you. You now believe you're the one that's going to deliver when the need is greatest or when you're really under pressure. And Clifford definitely did. And big word for Stephen O'Brien as well. Now, I don't think that was a free. I have to say, I don't think it was the colour of a free. The one where I think he was falling already and might have got the slightest of touches, but they got free out of that. But he had some impact off the bench again. And I wasn't sure he had that left-footed point in his locker either. That point where he came back and it was a really high pressurized shot. He usually cuts in off the right and kind of shoots this kind of low one just over the bar. I haven't really seen him. I'm open to correction, but I haven't really seen him shooting that much off his left. It's usually a hand pass over the bar running through, or that low effort off the right. But that point off his left foot was at a huge time, and it was just a huge score in the context of the game.
Yeah, someone might correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like that put Kerry 1 point ahead, maybe 2. And I actually thought the way he celebrated, I was like, whoa, it's still a bit
yeah, same. Yeah. I was thinking the exact same. Yeah. But what's the disappointing, Shano, at the end? It's just like, if you compare that to Tip and Offaly in the minor last year, when the free went in and it was perfect, and McGuigan, I don't know, he obviously wasn't going for the point, but it felt like the final whistle blew, and it was a real anticlimax because everyone was just built up for, a ball being thrown into the mixer at the end, and who knows what could happen, but unfortunately it didn't materialize. And that was probably the only black mark against McGuigan, who got some fair treatment throughout the game, but was outstanding.
Yeah, what year was it that Mayo played Dublin and they knocked over a late free thinking that they had time for another
13. I think that still rankles with Cillian O'Connor, because he maintains he was told by the referee that there was another play. He put that free over and they were 1 down and the final whistle blew.
And I don't know if it's quite as high stakes, but yesterday morning for the Coola third team, we were up against Clonagale and we had a last minute free around the 21, and I think the young lad who took it, he was trying to blast it, more or less dip it at the crossbar, but it went over, and you're like, oh, let it into me. But I know.
Well, I have a bit of an issue with that, I think, because there's a fair chance that the ball is going to go over the bar. If you absolutely welt it at the ground, it's not going to go over the bar. It can only go into the goal, if you get me, or really low. Whereas if you leave it in around that area, around the crossbar, that's why the other man in this OurGame show today probably should have been hitting that free at the end. There's no point saying any different.
Colin Lyon's blind spot. This is a good one about Clifford. Sean Finn with a hurley wouldn't have got a block in on Clifford yesterday. Greatest of all time. Is it just me, or have Kerry played far more better teams this year en route to the final? Better teams than they played last year, or better teams than Dublin have played? I'm just not entirely sure what you mean there.
Who've they played? Mayo, Cork, Louth, Tyrone, Derry.
Yeah, they've had to play some tough games, and take that Mayo game out of it, they've been pretty good, haven't they, all the way? Like, to be honest, they weren't that good against Cork either in the group.
No, they were poor against Mayo. They got over the line against Cork, a dodgy penalty decision. They've probably turned it on from the Louth game, since the Louth game, really. Put up a huge score that day, beat Tyrone by 12. Now they were under pressure at different stages yesterday. There's no point in saying any different, but they were able to find a way. Buglock made an impact off the bench. O'Brien made an impact off the bench. Yeah, even Michael Burns made an impact. They got a bounce off the lads that came in, allied with Stephen Clifford as well.
Yeah,
or Stephen Clifford, David Clifford. Jesus Christ.
I think Oran Lynch has been very good the last couple of years. I did think that at times it didn't really work for him yesterday, and he got blocked down there at one stage. But I remember Kieran McFall a few times kind of telling him, make the overlap run. So I just I don't think he was quite as effective. But it was interesting when you look at the amount of chances that Derry missed, and they left some serious goal chances behind them. That time that Garrett McKinless went through, and obviously he's a brilliant player, and you'd hope that injury wasn't too bad at the end. You can see how that would actually be a bad one. When you go to swing the leg fully and the ball was knocked out of the way and he did a bit of an air shot, geez, your leg can be left very exposed to hyperextension or something like that. So hopefully it's not too bad, because, his club will obviously need him as well. But when he went through that time and he blasted the shot and it was blocked brilliantly by Shane Ryan, I mean, what a performance by him. But normally McKinless is the one man you want going through to spot someone to hand the ball off to palm it into the net. But even if you look at from 42 minutes on, at 110 to 112 for Derry, Brendan Rodgers hit the post. Niall Toner, he had a tame goal chance. Doherty kicked the ball wide. Oran Lynch's point attempt was blocked down. McKinless, that goal chance that I just mentioned, they just left too many chances behind them. And Kieran Mina, who's obviously taken over this year, and we shouldn't ignore the fact that they had to change their manager just before the Ulster final, and it was like front page news story all across the country what was going on. What a job he's done to just steady the ship and keep it going. But Mina said, look, we're probably in a state of shock because we expected to win the game. Not for 1 second did we envisage anything other than planning for an All-Ireland final. We were really confident coming into the game. So the reason we were in a state of shock and such devastation was because we expected to win. And for such a large portion of the game, right up until coming down the straight, it looked like we were going to win. And I suppose that's why. But what a performance they gave. And is it as simple as saying that experience on the biggest day of seeing out a game, of knowing you can get across the line, like you mentioned with Kerry, since they won that game against Dublin last year, maybe that's part, a lot of it comes down to just that, just knowing how to get over the line.
Maybe so, and I know this kind of might sound a bit mad, but the conversion rate was that high in the early stages that it does eventually drop off, whereas if a couple of them had went wide, maybe they would have kicked over, a couple of the chances that they had, that, the ones you said about hitting the post and a couple of tame kind of shots. The score and conversion rate just dropped off, and it dropped off at a really key time when they probably had a chance to get 3, maybe 4 up. Looking back at the game, they'd be woeful disappointed coming away with only 1 goal, having breached the Kerry line a few times. I thought Gavin White at different stages, not only for the goal, but thought defensively he was brilliant at different stages. Probably maybe an unheralded player a small bit, but yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe Kerry just got that bigger bounce from the bench as well, and maybe just had more options. Derry obviously carry a fairly threadbare squad. I think it's the smallest senior football squad in the country by some distance. And they might have just lacked that depth at the very, very end. Considering, I suppose, when you take it, that they took on Kerry, they played a high-energy game. They didn't sit back. There wasn't, a guy wheeling around the D, not resting throughout the game, but standing there and being positioned there. Everybody was going gung-ho. Everybody was going up. Niall McIntyre got a great shot of Chrissy McCaig and David Clifford down under hunkers deep into injury time, and nobody around them. Nobody within, an asses roared them. Everyone was getting up to try and attack, and that was a common theme kind of throughout the game. So, listen, it's small enough margins. When you lose, you analyse absolutely everything, but it was small enough margins, and they played a part in a belter of a game, and they'd obviously feel fairly crestfallen to have come up the wrong side of it.
So we've mentioned Shane Ryan a few times and how good he was in the goal. Brilliant save, got himself a brilliant point. So there's been some conversation around the targeting of Shane McGuigan. Brilliant forward for Derry, scored some lovely points. But should that have been a foul the time that Shane Ryan came careering through in the air, burst into Shane McGuigan? I think if we had the opportunity, and we're playing, if you had an opportunity to bury an opposition player at the same time, you would take it. But I couldn't help but think, because the collision was fairly heavy, of that famous tackle that was kind of talked about an awful lot from the 1982 World Cup. Do you remember a name called Harold Schumacher?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do you know that tackle that he did on
that
the
was a little bit different now.
I know. Okay, obviously it was. But do you remember the name of the France player that he buried himself into?
Yeah.
Go on. Well,
I
I'll
don't.
answer it for you because it's Patrick Battiston. And like, I think even to this day, I just looked at an article there from 2022. He still suffers with back pain, lost teeth, and he broke his rib. And the referee didn't even blow the whistle at the time. Now, obviously, the Shane Ryan tackle isn't of that level, but he did find a way to, and he was in possession of the ball. He did find a way to absolutely bury Shane McGuigan, and rightly so, I would say, as a player. But I don't know, like charging your body at someone mid-air, should that not be a free the other way? Because like, think about charging. Think about charging, right? You charge with the ball. How is this better?
I don't know if it's better, but I kind of feel like he was protecting himself somewhat, to be honest with you.
From what?
From potentially being done to himself. I think he was and I think when you have the ball, I'll put it this way, when you have the ball, it's very rare you're blown for charging, or it's less likely than in a scenario where the other fella has the ball. If you don't him, it's free nearly every day of the week. I didn't see any issue with this now. I didn't see any issue with it in normal time, and I didn't see any issue with it back when I watched it back, even in slow-mo. I think it was fine, but it looks to be one of the most divisive ones. It's literally 50-50. You have people, and we'll have commenters in there saying Colin blind spot, never free. The previous commenter had to be a free. Like, it's very, very divisive. I personally didn't think it was a free. The fact that he kicked the ball over the bar makes it an even more of a sickener for Derry people, obviously, as well. The fact that it could have been a free in for Derry around the middle of the pitch, and Shane Ryan puts it over the bar at the other end, but wasn't free for me.
Yeah, my old clubmate Niall Carty says, no chance it's free. Derry player put himself in a vulnerable position. Darrell Lahan says he knew what he was doing, but that can't be called as a free, really. Red Lad says he jumped into him, FFS. Niall Morgan got a black card for it earlier this year. I do think that the referee could give it either way, and it would be difficult to argue the call. But if you're a Derry person, you're going to feel hard done by. Do you think that Shane McGuigan got the treatment in this game?
One of the belts he got, it was a follow through after he kicked the score in the first half. Like, to be honest with you, neither of us were in there watching it, where you can see it, a little bit clearly. I only saw what was on the box. He got. Well, listen, he's one of the marquee forwards in the country. Kerry are going to look at him and think, if we can keep him somewhat quiet, we're going to win the game. Did he get like really rash treatment? I don't know. I thought it was bordering unfair. Maybe just the other side of it. But I probably would have had to be in the grounds to make a real proper call on it. But Shane, like, what does David Clifford get in every game he's playing in? Really, like, nothing. Like, it's it's mad, some of the stuff that goes on. And lads will literally do anything. The unfortunate thing from a Derry point of view is that the supporting cast maybe wasn't as strong as David Clifford's supporting cast was. Where was the, your Batman to your Robin, your Sean O'Shea coming in helping Clifford?
You're Verney if you're Stapleton.
I would have it the other way around personally. But where was the ally to McGuigan really to kick 3 or 4 points? Probably wasn't there. And that's probably why it looks maybe harsher, him getting a bit of treatment or whatever, that there wasn't another player there to pick up the fall, shall we say.
Yeah, so the big question here, and we want comments in from the viewers, which is Batman and which is Robin, and why between Stapleton and Verney? So get the comments in and let us know.
I think it's a poll. I think that's a poll all day long.
Well, we'll get a poll going afterwards, but get the comments in and let us know who is which and why. Do you think Derry will get back here again? I'd be confident that they will get back here again. I think it's important that Kieran Meena stays on, because he's shown already in the space of a couple of months that he can keep the show on the road. And what they've done from last year compared to this, they've now developed a lot of players that can score, and the idea of them scoring 1-6 or whatever in an All-Ireland semi-final next year seems really remote. So I think it's very important that they find a way to get him to stay on.
His post-match interview was, I thought, very thoughtful and honest as well. He comes across as a really good guy. The only thing is he's taken over. He'll be starting out the start of the year. That's a different prospect than taking over mid-season. Like, when did he take over? About 8 weeks ago? That's a different prospect. You're kind of keeping the show on the road. Whereas, when he starts back if he does start back as manager, it'll probably be in 4 to 6 weeks' time as regards planning. It's not keeping the show on the road. It's like, you are the show. You're organising absolutely everything. And it'll be interesting to see whether he brings in some new faces to the backroom team, to the squad, where he tries to increases a bit of depth. But it is a different task for him now completely than just keeping the show on the road. So that would be the one caveat I would put with it. But I think they can definitely get back to this stage again. I don't see why not. Like, look how much they've progressed since that kind of semi-final against Galway last year. They've progressed immeasurably. It does remind you a lot of Donegal from 11 to 12. They obviously didn't get the All-Ireland in the second year like Donegal did, but like, it's significant improvement. And outside of Christy McCaig, who's performed to a good level this year, probably not as good as 2022, the age profile is, okay. The main drivers of the team would say McIlnes, Glass, Shane McGuigan, they're all, Oran Lynch even in goals. They're all going to be around for, a good time to come. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be in around this scene over the next couple of years.
Yeah. What about Clifford's yellow card for this perfect shoulder? Like, I thought it was
very good. Yeah. Very good shoulder. Yeah. Maybe his reputation as, as good as he is, his reputation as a tackler is appalling. Like, it is. It's really like his reputation.
The Paul Scholes of GAA.
It's not far off it. Like, I'd look, how many yellows has he picked up? But like, just real, I don't know if it's lazy tackling. Maybe I'm being unfair here. Maybe he's actually cynically tackling and stopping teams in their tracks. But he picks up some amount of yellows from tackles. That was not a yellow. Not in the month of Sundays was that yellow yesterday. It looked a perfectly fair shoulder, but perfectly fair shoulders are so rare in the GAA now that most people think anytime there's a shoulder, and when you try to catch it in real time, you don't think it's a fair one, and you're blown. And it just goes to show you as well, in hurling and football, like, that's probably one of the reasons why the shoulder tackle is like nearly extinct now. They're blowing more so than not. And Clifford was on a yellow in the first half there yesterday. He easily could have picked up another yellow for something else and ended up off the pitch. And one of them would have been obviously unbelievably harsh. But yeah, that looked like a fair tackle to me.
Yeah, Brendan Redlad says Brendan Rodgers must be nailed on for an All-Star, probably with James McCarthy in midfield. 50-50 Ryan decision, says Jack. Colin Lyons blind spot. Lads, who gets the other midfield All-Star with Darragh O'Donovan? Also a big loss, Shane O'Donnell heading foreign next year. Well, we've done our All-Stars, our early All-Stars, so go check that out. See, the Louth GAA chairman has stepped down. Yeah, Peter Fitzpatrick, who of course was the manager when they got to that Leinster final in 2010. He's resigned. And he's also an independent TD for Louth. But there's supposed to be work commencing on their 25 million, 14,000 capacity venue outside Dundalk. But they were ordered not to by the GAA's Management Committee and Central Council pending a reassessment of the project. So obviously that's a huge part of it. So he stepped down. So I'd imagine this story will run for a while.
Just on that, Shane, like, you wonder, hopefully, I still think this can probably be salvaged potentially, but you'd wonder, does this leave Mickey Hart and Gavin Devlin in a bit of a spot as well? Fitzpatrick obviously brought them in. If he's no longer chairman, will they remain on? So this story will go on for quite some time, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Another couple of comments coming in here. There was one here specifically about the Batman and Robin stuff. Where is it? I can't find it. Oh yeah, you're Robin, Shane. Verney has the height on you.
I do not. Jesus, lads. I tell you, I'm 5'10" and a bit. I'd say you're
in heels.
Yeah, in flats. I'd say you probably have a bit of height on me in that regard.
Colbline's blind spot. Shane would want Hegarty red carded for that tackle. Will you go away or that?
It's kind of funny. I just see there's certain trolls online. Like, every time there's a tackle in hurling, and like, just say it's Kilkenny and Clare. Oh, Grown Hegarty should have got a red for that. Or do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just people absolutely love it.
Let's see. Oh yeah, Joe LK20. Sean Kavanagh telling the Gooch that Clifford is the greatest Kerry player of all time. What do you think? Well, I think it's pretty self-evident. He is, because he delivers constantly in the biggest games against the toughest teams, which historically, yeah, there are other Kerry players that probably are much before our generation. But of the generations we've seen, I don't think any player stands up against the big teams the way he does and in the big moments. No way. Like, it's different, to playing against Mayo teams that used to just completely fade in finals, or Cork teams that come up and get battered by Kerry in finals. This is Clifford doing it against everybody every day.
Yeah, if you look at his county career and the expectation and pressure that he brought with him from his minor days, like probably one of the greatest minor careers of all time, and you're thinking it's probably something similar to Joe Canning's kind of underage career with Galway. You're thinking, can this lad like cope with the pressure when he comes through to senior level? He wins an All-Star in 18. Remember, he got that goal against Monaghan up in Clonus to keep them alive in the Super 8, last kick of the game. Ended up with 1-4, 1-5. Got the All-Star that year. Think he got one in 19 obviously as well. Didn't get one in 20. Got one in 21, I think. Got Footballer of the Year last year. Do you know what I mean? Like that's phenomenal so far. And like what odds is he for Footballer of the Year this year? He's probably nailed on again. He'd be the first. I think he'd be the first in Jack O'Shea to get back-to-back Footballer of the Years, providing they win. He mightn't get it if they lose. Yeah, he's backed up every bit of hype, and you're kind of thinking, yeah, greatest Kerry footballer of all time is one claim, but like he's getting closer and closer to be, and it's mad to say it for a guy who's played 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 6 years of intercounty football, and you're saying that he could be the greatest footballer of all time, or a lot of people are saying he already is the greatest county footballer of all time, I should say. Like that's unbelievable.
I'm saying he is, because there's no player that I want to watch more. And who were we saying? Somebody tweeted, how many tickets would you sell just to,
yeah, I think it was Cormac O'Malley tweeted, it was like, how many, if you put Clifford in a big stadium, 40, 50,000, and you charge a tenner in, like how many people would pay in just to see him kicking frees or doing his bounce, kind of his hop and kicking scores from play or whatever it is. I'd say you get 20,000 in there easy. If you look at the amount of people, you put him in the Midlands, he's just do a tour. The Butty Sugru type character that brought Muhammad Ali to Croke Park back in the day. Someone needs to bring like the Clifford Circus on tour. Do you know what I mean? Like Clifford Circus, and you just bring him around the country and you get him to do his things in various GA pitches around the country. Jeez, he'd make an absolute bomb.
Actually, you mentioned that Butty Sugru guy. So he was a bit of an entrepreneur in Ireland. I can't remember all the different things, but he
strong man too. A very strong man as well. Strong man, very strong.
There was a great documentary on RTE about this before, about how he got Muhammad Ali to come and fight at Croke Park. But one of the things, he was involved in a pub as well, or they had a family pub or whatever. So people used to come to the pub, and what he used to do was they used to give out for free bacon to everyone that would show up there. So people would show up on a Friday, and you'd be mad for a few pints, but then of course you get a bit of a hunger on you as well. So what they used to do was load up the bacon with a load of salt, because that would dehydrate you and make you thirstier still.
Genius.
So people would have more scoops. So
absolute genius. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip in some American show. It's like, I can't think of the man's name now. He's only a young fella, but 5 or 6. He's like, bacon is good for me. Your one comes in and clears out the fridge of all the treats that he eats, and he's like, he will not have his bacon be taken away from him. He's about 5 years old, I'd say. But yeah, Butty Sugru is a really, really interesting fella. I think he used to drink he used to drink some type of animal blood. He used to help with his strength or something like that. Like, mad. I remember, very fascinating character. Definitely worth a Google.
Did he Charlie Sheen, didn't he have tiger blood? Wasn't that the whole video?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's just Clifford Circus. I'm telling you, Clifford Circus, bring him around the country.
Didn't Butty Sugru? He did a thing where he pulled a bus across Westminster Bridge with his teeth, and because as you mentioned, he's a strong man. Did he also do a thing where he's buried alive for 61 days? Actually, I just googled it there. I see a thing like he's got a nut story. Look up that documentary, folks. It's brilliant. We'll go to the other semi-final. Dublin won 17, Monaghan 13. 7 points is probably not a fair reflection of how the game went. You were in there. You saw it. What was it like? What was the atmosphere like?
It was deadly atmosphere. It was the first Dublin game I've been at in a long time where they were probably out-supported, I'd say, by the Farney faithful. They were ravenous, and they were, it's very, very similar to what Derry produced yesterday. It was obviously a far more cagey game, but Monaghan got themselves into the position that they wanted to be in. They probably went with, they went with Manze from the start, and they went with some of the older players, Darren Hughes, etc., from the start, and they probably were missing that kick at the end. That, like, McManus took a ball on maybe 67, 68 minutes, and you're just thinking he was fouled at one stage in it, maybe out around the 65 or that. He didn't get the free. I thought the referee's hand would have went up, but it didn't go up, and he just stayed going. And it looked like he knew he needed to take on a point himself, but he couldn't shake the Dublin defence, and he just looked kind of goosed kind of thereafter. But I thought he'd a deadly battle with Mick Fitzsimons. Probably got the upper hand in the second half, but Fitzsimons had probably had the upper hand in the first half. And I was looking at it as well. I took a picture at one stage. It was like, 35-year-old Conor McManus standing on the edge of the square, being marked by 34-year-old Mick Fitzsimons with 41-year-old Stephen Cluxton in behind, and about 80 yards space in front of them. I swear to God, there was about 80 yards in front of them. I was just thinking, this is mad. Like, kind of probably thinking that neither of them wants this much space in front of them, regardless of age. But Monaghan delivered a brilliant display, and they were just, I don't know if it was fatigue or whatever, but there was a couple of big turnovers just after the hour mark, just nearly on the hour mark, and the game kind of turned on that. And Brian Fenton roared into it, James McCarthy roared into it. Brian Fenton as well. His shots to scores ratio has to be unbelievably high. And he never shoots off the back foot. He's always on the front foot shooting. He's always in a really comfortable position when he shoots. He's never under pressure. He's never leaning back or anything like that. But he came good when he was really, really needed. And McCaffrey, obviously, as well, kicked the point at the very end when he was needed too. Made a couple of his incisive enough runs. But just that bit of nous and that bit of experience of the Dubs, and the greater power probably from the bench as well, realistically.
Yeah, we were writing about it at OurGame.ie as well. And I just, I don't feel that these Dublin players, like these iconic names, and you've mentioned some of them, that they're dominating games the way they were before, but they're producing moments that are massive. Like James McCarthy, some of those trademark bursts, Brian Fenton, the points that you mentioned. Even, at times Con was excellent and at times he was quiet, but even that ball he gave for Dean Rock at the very end was huge. And obviously it finished off the game. Rock didn't get it in at the first time of asking, but he eventually got it in. And another point I want to make is Jack McCaffrey. That whole decision over the 45. To me now, the referee or the officials looked up at the screen. They saw the replay and they realised, okay, this isn't a 45. And that's why it wasn't given. And last week we had the incident between Clare and Kilkenny, and the decision was overturned because of that as well. And it just kind of, I think it's ramming home more and more the importance that let's just use the video technology if it's there, because a lot of the time you see the referees going into chat to the umpires. They spend 30 seconds messing around anyway. So why not just do the same thing and just use the video technology if it's there? Like, let's say it's a 45 and normally it takes 30 to 40 seconds for the player to go out and take it. Okay, while that's happening, we'll have a quick little check and just tell the player to hold on a second. It'll probably only add another 10 seconds. Why not?
Yeah, the only, I tell you what, an issue I thought was the worst I've ever seen it in Croke Park the other day. I know they don't, they've made this edict of not showing controversial incidents on the big screen. For fear of what? I'm not really sure.
Okay. So the flip side of that is we've had brawls in Hill 16 recently, so it might lead to more brawls because there are a certain amount of immature people out there or people that have been drinking for hours.
That's a fair point. Okay, that's a fair point. But I was looking. I hadn't a screen in front of me in Croke Park. It was kind of up the back in the media area. I wasn't deemed, one of the esteemed lads down the front to have their own little screen that can check on all the incidents in real time. So I was relying on the big screen, and it was a waste of time. There was none of the calls. I'm surprised that the McCaffrey 45 was even on the big screen. Because they usually wouldn't be. And I was only thinking from a punter's point of view, if you're after paying 40 quid to get into that game, and when you go to the All-Ireland final, you're going to pay 90 quid to get in as a regular punter, if you're anywhere in the terraces, and you can't even watch a replay of something that might be in any way contentious. To me, that's absolutely bizarre. But on your point of if the technology is there, use it. Definitely. I just think they need to be way looser on what they're showing on the big screen, and they need to show these incidents. I'll put you this way. Would you rather not show the incident on the big screen and not give the referee the chance to potentially overrule it, and what could be a game-defining incident? Just give them the opportunity if it's there. That would be kind of my view on it. Also on the big screen, I think you might have said this before, but Rory Beggan obviously goes forward the whole time. It's fascinating to see him run back the pitch. He's not looking at the play. He's just looking up at the big screen to see where the ball is. So he's just jogging like that. And if the ball is flying around the middle of the field, he starts sprinting. But if it's not and it's a ponderous build-up, he's just jogging like that, looking up at the big screen. I just thought it was fascinating, and it was a great way to use technology.
Yeah, after the game, I think Vinnie Corey was talking, and he was been asked about Manze, and he said there's more in the tank for him, and he's probably looking to get Darren Hughes, who's 36, and Carl O'Connell, who's 35, back next year. And in terms of the players, he says, I don't see why not. You've seen there today, there was younger boys coming off tight, but the older boys weren't coming off at all. Darren Hughes, Carl O'Connell and Conor McManus played 70 minutes plus, and some of them played against Armagh, 70 minutes plus extra time. I wouldn't be rushing to judgments there. I think there's more in the tank in them boys, absolutely. If you're playing a full 70 or 90-minute game this year, in another few months' time, you're fit to do it again. Some of them boys have given a lot of service. It will be completely their decision, but we'll not be dragging them away, that's for sure. If you're a manager and you've gotten, like we talked earlier about the disadvantage if you get appointed late. Vinnie Corey, for a finish, it was almost like he was taking on the job that nobody wanted. What a job he's done. And he definitely wants to keep as much of that panel together, because you saw when some of the other players were brought off the bench and brought in that they didn't get that same bounce. I wonder actually if Corey could go back and do it again, would he have started McManus on the bench, knowing that maybe there was an opportunity when, Fitzsimons, who's been unbelievable for Dublin over the years, that he might come in a bit fresher on a 34-year-old in the second half, and maybe he would have had a bit more of a bounce. Like Desi Ward, I thought it didn't happen for him at all. I wondered, was Jack McCarron, even though his form has been up and down, would he have been a better player to start in this game?
My only thoughts on that are, I think Corey set up the team to be in with a chance coming down the stretch. And it's one thing, what's the point in bringing on Conor McManus when you're 4 or 5 down? Potentially, that's my own... So, you're really robbing Peter to play Paul there. It's a really kind of difficult one. I'd much rather be in the game and give yourself a chance, and they just weren't able to execute in the last. It's very similar to 2 games over the weekend. Monaghan got to 13 points, probably around the hour mark, didn't score. Derry got to 150, they were 114 and didn't score for a long time until McGuigan's free at the very, very end. So they struggled for scores in that kind of last kind of couple of minutes. But we probably got the final. Listen, Derry and Monaghan people obviously will disagree, but I think most neutrals got the final that they wanted. We're obviously in the colours here today as well. It's one of the great GAA rivalries. No point in saying any different. You have a Kerry team coming, like it has set up perfectly. If you look at it from what the Dublin want to achieve this year, they wanted to right the wrong with Mayo in the quarterfinal. They maybe wanted to right the wrong with Monaghan in the semi-final for the team that relegated them from Division 1. And let's call it a spade a spade. Mannion, McCaffrey and Cluxton came back because they looked at Kerry winning the All-Ireland last year and it sickened them. Let's call it a spade. That's a fact. And Jack O'Connor said as much in the press conference after yesterday. Them boys didn't come back from the crack. They came back to dethrone Kerry. And now it's set up. It's all the Dubs, all the old guard is back to try and dethrone Kerry. Like, what an achievement it will be for Kerry to go and do back-to-back. And then on the flip side of it, what an achievement it will be for McCarthy, Fitzsimons, Cluxton and Co. to get 9 All-Irelands. Like, there is some amount at stake in this All-Ireland.
Yeah, and just a reminder, these jerseys are brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you'll get 15% off. 1234, Hurling 1234 says, lads, what do you make of one Crokes player in the Dublin 26? They were in the last 2 Club All-Ireland finals. That is an interesting point, actually, isn't it?
Craig Diaz. Paul Lanning's the only one in 26. Yeah. Yeah, Diaz has been in around there, all right. Yeah, I suppose it's probably a bit of a sign of the club. There are massive differences between the club and county game. You could have a brilliant club team, lads performing to an unbelievably high level. They might just be below that county level, but they could still be the best club team in the country as they are.
Yeah, well, it's obviously good for the club to have them together for an extra maybe 5 months. But then you look at the likes of Shane Walsh and his form this year, and maybe it's a different reason that he didn't get to the same heights. But if you're together with the club for as long, is it difficult to then get back and gel in with the county team who've probably been training at a higher intensity for a while? You look at the Ballygunner lads there for a couple of years, the likes of Ian Kenny, and there's probably Peter Hogan and a couple more who were so good with the club, and then I don't know, maybe they were jacks, just in bits after a full club season, and maybe they struggled to get back in, or maybe other lads had the jersey and that kind of stuff. So it might have something to do with that as well.
I think it's funny you say that because, like, Evan Comerford was the number 2 for Dublin maybe 2-3 years ago, and wasn't been picked by Ballymun because
Sean Curry was playing all the league games.
Yeah, he was playing all the league games, and you're like, keeper is so integral to what we're doing. All the kick-out strategies. It's kind of difficult to have a lad rocking back in for 3 or 4 weeks before championship and have any sort of a structure in play. So I often thought with Ballymun in particular, I think that 5, maybe 6 involved at different stages, that they were one of the clubs that were being hurt most. And maybe it's no coincidence that Crokes are going so well now, because they're not relying on a load of county players. Obviously outside of Walsh and Mannion.
Yeah, so just the scores for Dublin in that match. Cormac Costello scored 7, 4 of those were from place balls. Dean Rock scored 1-1. Conor Callahan and Paul Mannion and Brian Fenton, they got a couple each. And then Paddy Small, Lee Gannon and Jack McCaffrey. Manze scored 5 for Monaghan, one of those from play. Rory Began with 3 45s. Stephen O'Hanlon, Micheál Bannigan, Mohan McAnespy and Jack McCarran, they all got a point each. Desi Farrell said afterwards, I'm sure a lot of people, myself included, were wondering whether it was going to happen or not with 10 minutes to go. We backed ourselves if we were in that position, that having those types of players on the pitch at that stage would be a huge help. It proved to be the case today. On another day, it may not, because those senior lads are a little bit older and you never know. Every game takes on a life of its own. But today, it definitely worked for us. And just in terms of the old guard, he was saying you can't coach it, you can't give it to young fellas. They're brilliant, they're full of energy, they want to be involved, they want to be part of it. There are certain things that life experience teaches you. How to close out big games, like that is one of them. We're fortunate to have that type of experience and depth in the squad. Like that sort of stuff. It's just staying cool under pressure. I think that's a lot of what it means, that you don't start looking up at the scoreboard too much, that you don't get panicked when the other team gets a score, that you just keep going, keep doing the things that got you there in the first place.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but Kieran Kerry had a good one last Thursday where one of the older Limerick lads had said to him, like, the coolest man in the room always prevails, or the coolest man in the pitch always prevails. Something paraphrased somewhat. But if you're able to stay cool in those kind of really, really frenetic scenarios, like the Dubs did on Saturday and like Kerry did on Sunday, you'll usually prevail. But I think it's just that adds further spice. What is it going to be? The Dublin experience that gets them through the final, or is it going to be Clifford and Co to do back to back? And like, I think Kerry have had a problem generally with back to back, haven't they? Like if you look at
6-7 was the last time.
Yeah, they were beaten in 15 after they won it in 14. They're back in the final again, and they encountered a fair bit of turbulence yesterday, but still managed to get through it. And their squad depth looks really good. I think Killian Spillane will be back for the final as well. I think Jack O'Connor said he'd only 3 pitch sessions or something done, but he'll have another 4 or 5 under his belt for the final. So I think he's the last. Is Killian Spillane the last man to score a championship goal on Cluxton as well, who has now 13 championship clean sheets in a row. 2019 drawn All-Ireland final is the last goal he conceded, which is nuts.
That is nuts. Okay, let's go, and actually just want to bring this up as well. People talk about the iconic Clifford and whatever. If you want to go to ourgame.ie, ourstore.ie, we've got all sorts of t-shirts there, including this brilliant t-shirt there.
The fact that it's in the Kerry colours as well is perfect, like.
Yeah. Okay, so we've plenty more football to talk about in the Tailteann Cup final, but we wanted to do a little power rankings. We've probably been building up to this for a long time. But the Kilkenny 06-09 team and the Limerick 2020 to now team, so the one that did 4 in a row versus the one that's bidding to do 4 in a row. How on earth are we going to pick a combined 15 here, Michael Verney? You wanted to do this, so all criticism direct at ML Verney on Twitter.
Yeah, we wanted to do it. We're going to give it a fair whack. Now, I will say this: the goalkeeping spot is probably one of the easier spots to pick. You have to say, if you look at Kilkenny 06-09. I think McGarry played 06-07, and with due respect, was a very good keeper. And PJ Ryan was man of the match in the 09 final. But like, if you look at the career that Nicky Quaid has had, since the late, he started in 09 or 2010, and you look at the level he's brought goalkeeping to now, him and O Murphy have probably taken goalkeeping to another level. So I think Nicky's a firm number 1 there.
Yeah, try to be somewhere neutral. Shane says 36 in county. Obviously a Kilkenny man. I'm always neutral. I want both teams to lose. I want no one picked. So cornerback options. So you're looking at Sean Finn, Michael Kavanagh, Jackie Tyrrell, I mean, I might as well bring in both full-back slots at this stage, or both cornerback slots at this
Barry
stage.
Nash.
Jackie Tour, did I already mention him? Let me just look up the 2006 All-Ireland final.
Where are we standing on JJ Delaney in this?
Well, if you look at the 08 final, he played at wing back.
He played at wing back throughout this whole run and actually didn't play in the 06 final. So are we only looking at him as a wing back, or is he an option for full back?
I think we're going to have to man up and say, did he play full back primarily in that run? Probably not, and probably look at him more as a wing back only here.
Yeah, Noel Hickey was kind of in his prime around this time. So he's the full back option. Going up against what? Who's he going up against? Mike Casey, Dan Morrissey. I'm not forgetting anyone, am I?
That played full back for
I think it's just the two of them. So you have Sean Finn in cornerback, obviously. I have to say now, I'm a massive Mick Kavanagh fan. I thought he was unreal for Kilkenny. Even that, I was looking back at it recently. I just wanted a little pick me up one day. So I just looked at the last 10 minutes of the 09 final, and his, you know what I mean? It's just, you're just like, today's kind of, you're kind of just tipping along. Just a little perk me up. Just watch the last 10 minutes.
You are a weird lad.
I'm not weird. I was doing a piece, and I just said I'd have a little look back on it. But his little sliding effort he slid out over the sideline, the Hogan stand side, but managed to keep the ball in, and then all of a sudden, 15 seconds later, Martin Crumford had the ball in the back of the net. But I would rate him really, really highly as a cornerback, I'd have to say. But Jesus, it's very hard to go against Sean Finn. Very hard to go against Sean Finn.
Actually, I just double checked it there just to be sure, and JJ did play full back in the 09 final.
Was Noel Hickey injured in the 9 final or what? Maybe he
was. He played in the 09 final at full back. Played the full game there.
Who did? JJ or Noel Hickey?
JJ. But Noel Hickey played there in 08, 07 and 06.
He played there in 10 obviously as well. JJ comes into the full back reckoning, so realistically.
Well, he only played there for 1 out of the 4 games, and he played wing back for he didn't play in 06 because he
cruciate in 06. Yeah.
So 07 he played wing back, 08 he played wing back. So I think if Hickey has played there in 3 of the 4 finals, and of the 3 that Delaney has played, he's played 2 of them wing back. I think we have to look at him as a wing back only.
Okay, that makes that. This is going to be some stacked half back line.
I think that adds a little something to it. Shane, who's the goalkeeper of the year in football? We'll come back to that a little bit later. Not one Kilkenny player gets in the Limerick half back line.
We'll see about that now.
JJ Hickey got sick, I think. Was that not a couple of years earlier? Was that not around 05 or 06 he had the heart issue?
I can't remember fully, but maybe we should just nail our colours to the mast. So are we going Noel Hickey, Dan Morrissey, or Mike Casey for the full back spot?
I think Dan Morrissey. Noel Hickey, he did very well as well.
Dan Morrissey's played wing back, obviously, in that too.
But has he primarily played full back in the last few years?
Dan?
Yeah.
He played wing back last year. He came in 2020 and reinvented him as a full back when Casey got injured just before the COVID championship started. 2021. I think he played fullback again. Casey played fullback predominantly all the games last year. Dan Morrissey played fullback a bit this year. I'd be stumping for Noel Hickey now. In his prime, he was the fullback of his generation. To me, anyway. Now Dan is unbelievably versatile, unbelievably consistent, and Mike Casey's obviously had his injuries, but when he's fit, he's so good. And it's funny, like Noel Hickey's not a huge man. Mike Casey's not a huge man. Dan Morrison's obviously, like, he could probably play for the Irish rugby team. He's that big. But I'd be going for Hickey fullback.
Okay, fair enough. Then and I'll go along with that as well. So who would you say then is the number 4? So here we're picking between the likes of Barry Nash, we're picking JJ Delaney. Sorry,
Jackie Turd,
I should say. Yeah, who are you looking at here?
Probably looking at Jackie, being honest. I'm probably looking at Jackie. Barry Nash was obviously in the conversation for Hurler of the Year last year. Has been brilliant. He's mad as well when you look at it. He hadn't played cornerback before the COVID championship in 2020. So Casey been out, put Morrissey back fullback and put Nash cornerback. Imagine today, like what he's gone on to do as a cornerback since. Jesus, Jackie was so hard beat as a cornerback, though, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. No, I'm happy enough to put him in there. I think he deserves his spot there. Yeah, 36 and counting. Surprise, surprise.
Hey, let the games begin now. 5, 6, and 7. So geez, when you go down through the personnel that we have to choose from here,
right?
Like
so Dermot Burns, reigning hurler of the year. We've got Tommy Walsh, 2009
nine-time All-Star,
and 2009 hurler of the year. So he was hurler of the year during this particular era and finished up that final against Tipperary, holding the ball and running off, charging around the field. Who else do we have for the wing-back spots? We've Kyle Hayes and we've JJ Delaney. So it's a straight, and we're going to pick wing-backs at wing-back, and we're going to go centre-back with centre-back. So it's straight up Tommy against Dermot Burns because they both play number 5 all the time.
Can I just ask you here, right? If we're picking this team, what way are we picking it? Are we picking it as a team, because I'd be picking it in the sense of I'd probably have one Kilkenny and one Limerick in the sense of the wing backs are completely different. There'd be great balance. I'm just saying, if you had Dermot Burns at 5 and we'd say JJ at 7, there's a great balance to that. If you had Tommy at 5 and you have Kyle Hayes more forward, there's a great balance to that. But I don't know, in a way, if you can have the 2 Kilkenny and the 2 Limerick. I think there needs to be a balance to it. That's my opinion.
And yet somehow having the 2 of them together worked out great for both their teams. So that is the greatest load of rot I've ever heard.
I'm just trying to say in the modern game,
you're looking for a way out. You're looking to pick one of each, and look, we'll just call it square and leave it at that.
Oh, okay. I'll pick mine here now. Tommy Walsh 5, JJ Delaney 7.
Right. So you've nailed your Kilkenny colours to the mask as always. Is Kyle Hayes not the greatest athlete we've ever seen in hurling?
Greatest athlete. Is JJ Delaney not the greatest defender we've ever seen in hurling?
I mean, it's not like no is the answer to any of these questions. But to be fair, Kyle Hayes is the best athlete hurling's ever seen.
He's unbelievable, yeah. And he obviously can play. He can probably play. He can go in 6. He can go in wing forward. He can go in full forward. He can go in centre forward.
And JJ can obviously play in certain other positions. And I'd say he probably could have played in the forwards or at least full forward as well if they ever needed him up there.
Yeah.
Oh, this is tough. All right. Actually, and just before we answer that one, because we've no idea how we're going to answer it, with Burns, the amount he scores from frees and from play.
Yeah.
Now, and Tommy obviously had the versatility, all-stars in 3 different lines. But Burns, the amount of times he gets big scores on big days, he stepped up so many times this year, and obviously had to play through Munster Championships. We might as well bring that up again.
Right, but just on that as well, see, the modern thing I'm saying to you is worth bringing up. It's just like Tommy, you didn't shoot from wing back then, whether it was to do with conditions, whether it was to do with strength conditioning, whether it was to do with hurls, whether it was to do with the weight of the ball. Whereas Burns now,
Sean O'Halpine used to, did he not, or no, was it?
He never shot.
The 06 semi-final was the first time he ever scored from play.
Yeah,
but did John Gardner not score from play?
He did, yeah, but it was a rarity. I'm just saying, if you're picking a modern team, like Dermot Burns, you have someone who can score from 120 yards from frees out of his hand. If someone who can hit 65s, that's kind of what I'm trying to say to you. Are we picking, a team for 15 years ago, or are we picking a team for now? Because Burns, if you're picking a team for now, it's very hard to leave Dermot Burns off it.
So what is our criteria? We don't have any criteria, of course, is the big problem here. And we're just trying to imagine, I think we're trying to imagine either Burns back in that era or the likes of Walsh and Delaney in this era. And I think all 4 would do well in the opposite eras. Oh, it's so hard to pick. This is ridiculously hard to pick. Tommy or Joe, I'll go with Tommy Walsh. I just found him just thrilling to watch.
Can I ask
you? I didn't want Kilkenny. I always wanted them to lose, but what a player.
Can I ask you a question from a Tipperary supporter's point of view?
No.
Just a genuine question. How killing was it to have him against you in big games? I'll put it to you that way.
Yes, but you could also say that about Burns as well, because he's, how many times has he put the dagger in the heart of the opposition? But like, I agree with you. Like when Tommy Walsh won a ball and put it to the clouds, it was worth extra. It was the same as like Brian Lohan putting the ball to the clouds. The supporters went nuts for it as well, and it really did lift the team. So I'd be okay with going Tommy Walsh here, but at the same time doffing the hat at Dermot Burns. I'd be okay with going for Tommy Walsh here.
Hey, I'm happy with that too. And Dermot Burns is an unbelievable player. The thing is, the caveat you have to take into this as well is that, like, where will Dermot Burns be in 5 years? Where will Kyle Hayes be in 7 or 8 years?
We're talking about that 4-year period.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Part of our memory of Tommy is what he did before and what he did after as well, if you get me, and JJ as well. Whereas Limerick, those boys are all still in their prime at the moment. I think we'll stick with the numbers we are at the minute. So we're at number 6. It's not cut and dry in the sense of, I think Declan Hannon is definitely favourite to take the number 6. But if you talk to anybody in Kilkenny, they will tell you that Brian Hogan was the glue that held Kilkenny together. Unassuming, always held his ground there. Probably played that sweeper 6 maybe before a lot of other players did, I'd say as well. Shielded his full backline really well. But like, if you look at what Declan Hannon has done from the number 6 position, he shields his defence really well. He quarterbacks up the field. Like, how many scores start with Hannon? How many of the triangle pass movements start with Hannon? How many big scores he got in big games? Thinking back to even, I know it's not in our remit, but the 2018 final when he came and got 2 points, he definitely got soared forward against Cork and got a point or two in 2021 as well. Can't remember whether he scored last year. But I'd be having Hannon. It'd be Hannon at 6 for me.
Yeah, it'd be Hannon as well for me. And I look, I'm with you. I echo everything you said about Brian Hogan. He's been absolutely brilliant. And even if we want a small little get-out clause, it's that John Tennyson played in one of those finals instead of him. It was 2006. So if we're looking for a little get-out clause, make it easier for ourselves, we could do that. But look, that's not to say that Brian Hogan wasn't brilliant. But that's evened it up. 3 each so far. Now the big one here. JJ or Kyle Hayes? I mean, both brilliant in their own right.
And completely different players. Like, totally different players. But obviously some similar traits, both brilliant under the high ball. I think Kyle Hayes' defending is totally underrated. I think he's a brilliant defender. A lot of people see him just going forward and marauding down the wing. That's not something that JJ ever would have done. There's no point in saying any different. I don't remember him being in the opposition half ever. In any game ever, really. But to me, he's the greatest defender I've ever seen anyway. And I've seen Brian Whelan at very, very close quarters. He'd be probably a close second in that regard. He's just an unbelievable defender. Try and penetrate a half back line of Walsh, Hannon and Delaney. You could say the same about Hayes, but Delaney would edge it just for me there.
It is a really tough one, but do you know what? I do think that JJ does just about get the nod here. Like, yeah, he was just unstoppable there for so long. And like, Hayes has played each one of these years, and JJ missed 1 year out of that 4-year period. So again, we could look for a little bit of wiggle room on that. But I do think for so many people, he's the greatest defender of all time. Brian Cody went out of his way to sort of make very positive, comments about him, when really he doesn't do that about anybody, certainly not to that level. So
Shane, it's so funny to see the comments coming in, right? It's like someone from Kilkenny, you two boys are high if you pick Hayes ahead of Delaney. Someone from Limerick has to be Hayes all day, every day. It's just gas. Like, I know they have an appreciation for lads in other counties, but the bias that comes in is unbelievable.
Yeah, Column Line's blind spot. This is Kyle Hayes, if you have anything about you, although Hayes won 2 finals in the half forward line, which is, a little get-out clause for us. We're looking for any little get-out clause we can get on some of these, aren't we?
I would still have had JJ ahead of Hayes here, but like, in time, maybe we'll be talking about, maybe this will be a 2020 to 2024 Limerick 5 in a row. You don't know, and maybe Hayes will have even more in the bank then. But geez, I'd be fairly happy if I was Nicky Wade standing in the goals with them 6 boys in front of me. I can tell you that. Okay,
midfield then. We're looking for a little bit more pain for ourselves here. Does Cha Fitzpatrick get in here?
Cha Fitzpatrick is definitely heavy in the conversation. That would have been his best hurling, wouldn't it? That era would have been his best hurling. Did he get Young Hurler of the Year in 06? Am I imagining that? He might have got Young Hurler of the Year in 06.
It might have been 06.
Cha and Derek Ling would be the two Kilkennys there. McFenny wouldn't come into the conversation. He was a sub in 09 and really only started playing in 10
there as well. Michael Rice played. So the midfielders that they had during that era, Tommy Walsh and was that, sorry, 1, 11, 12. Okay, so it was Tommy Walsh, it was Cha and Derek Ling in 06. It was Ling and Cha in 07. 08 was Cha and Ling, and 9 was Ling and Rice. So Ling seems to be the one that is there regularly. In the 09 final, he was taken off after 51 minutes. They both played the full match in 08. 07, they both played the full match. And 06, I think they both played the full match, although the Wikipedia doesn't make it clear there who come off. I think Cha Fitzpatrick might be high on the list here. Of the Kilkenny lads, I'd say probably Cha.
Yeah, so it's Cha and Ling, and it's O'Donovan and O'Donoghue, realistically.
Yeah, O'Donovan, yeah.
Imagine the contrast with Cha and Will O'Donoghue.
As in how they'd complement each other.
Oh my God. The silk and the brawn.
Yeah.
Darragh O'Donovan's probably one of the most underrated hurlers in the country at this stage, and maybe underappreciated at times. He's maybe getting the appreciation this year. If you had Ling and O'Donoghue, you'd have two absolute powerhouses, two similar type players. I'd be happy with Cha and Will O'Donoghue. Think you might be muted there, Shane. Think you might be.
Oh, I am indeed. Yeah, no, I'm happy enough to go with that. I think it's like.
Are we okay? I know we're saying that they complement each other beautifully. Is Darragh O'Donovan getting a raw deal here?
Well, I think that like he's playing unbelievable stuff at the moment, and like back in 2018, I was calling for him to be an all-star. And I think he's been really, really good throughout the period since. But I think Will O'Donoghue's probably those couple of years there, even during the COVID seasons, he was particularly dominant. And while O'Donovan was still really good, I think those couple of years there, I think O'Donoghue was the best midfielder in the country. So, yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. I think we're not doing a disservice to Darragh O'Donovan here because we think he's class and he could end up hurler of the year this year. But I think on the basis of what we're talking to up until now, without having seen the final yet, we'd have to go with him.
Okay. Derek Ling has probably not got enough of a spake here, and maybe he'll use it as motivation on Sunday. Who knows? But he was some power. And this was his peak time. Did he retire after 2010?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
This was 4 of his best years, I would say.
Yeah.
He was
a train coming up the middle. Yeah,
he was. He definitely, like, you could throw a blanket over the 4 of them, realistically.
You could indeed. Okay, Kilkenny played some of the worst teams of all time in those Leinster Championships. Can't compare them to this Limerick team, really. Chalk and cheese, says Colm Lyons, blind spot. Fair point?
Yeah, but they still went and beat all the Munster teams when they had to beat them in the All-Ireland stage. Do you know what I mean? I understand what he's saying. Until the provincial system changes, we're probably going to be having this conversation most years. But look at who's in the All-Ireland final again. A Leinster team and a Munster team. And you can say, all the Munster teams have been softened up to this point. Well, Limerick haven't been softened up. So, you know what I mean? And Kilkenny are still there. So I don't know. Do you know what I'm glad about? I'm glad we stuck to our metal on the power rankings for, I think, the whole of the year. With Kilkenny either 2 or 3 the whole of the year. And as blind as you are to Munster, times, you're not that blind.
Hey, I'm as blind as you'd see. Come here, is there anyone, like when we're naming the forward line here, is there any players that will just be like, okay, this person's number 14, this person's number 11, and we just, like, where are we picking Henry Shefflin? Now, I'll just go through, and I know positions mean nothing, blah, 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 but in the 09 final, he wore number 11, he wore number 14 in 08, 2007 wore 14.
He was in full forward. He got the goal, didn't he, against Limerick? Yeah.
Yeah, and he was centre forward in 2006. So we could play him centre forward. We could play him full forward. I'd be more inclined to probably play him centre forward.
Henry was hurler of the year from centre forward in 2006. Cian Lynch was hurler of the year from centre forward in 2021.
Oh no!
So it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, like Henry's a cert, Lynch is a cert. Those two are cert, and I'd say Aaron Gillan is a cert.
Yeah, and is Eddie a cert?
I think we have to go into it a bit more. Like, is Gerard Hegarty a cert? Hurler of the year in 20, man of the match, or 2021, was it? 2020, man of the match, All Ireland final performance in 21 and 22.
Owen Larkin, Tom Morrissey.
Yeah, see, this is, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just I think we both agree on Henry, Cian Lynch, and Gillan all been cert at this point, and then we can. It's just a matter of where we actually pick them, because Henry has greater flexibility, and has played full forward. Would you pick Henry at 14, Lynch at 11, and Gillan in the corner, but playing as a two-man full forward line, if you get me? And he can play at the edge of the square.
I'm happy to take any get-out clauses we can find here. So, right, I put a Lynch in at 11, Gillan in at 13, Henry's 14. Yeah, we're happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Porter says Richie Hogan has to be in there. And he's just like Richie Hogan only started his first championship match, and I was marking him in it. It was in 2008, and he I'm not even sure if he came on in the 2009 final. Richie Hogan played very, very little during this time. He played, like, him and TJ played very little during this time. They're not as good as they were since. They're not even in the conversation.
Yeah, Richie Power started in 2006, got himself a point. Richie Hogan didn't appear. He hadn't made his debut at that stage. Richie Hogan in 2007, he didn't start and wasn't on the bench either. 2008, did Richie Hogan start? I don't see his name there. No, he's an unused sub. He was an unused sub.
I want to track back a second, and Travis Spieler has made me kind of just track back a small bit. He says, Hegarty more of a certain Lynch. Hurler of the year is picked by journalists, quite frankly. It shouldn't hold much currency. PS, you two are knowledgeable journalists. Thanks very much for that. But if you look at the 4-year spell that we're talking about here, so Lynch's 18 hurler of the year is out of the question here, right? So he's brilliant he's very good in 20. He was hurler of the year in 2021. He didn't play in 2022.
He played minimally at the start.
And he's barely played in 2023.
Yeah.
So he's played 2 of the 4 years.
And he was hurler of the year in one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I think when you're looking at who you're going to leave out based on what they potentially achieved during that period. Like, if you look at what Owen Larkin achieved during that period, what Eddie achieved during that, do you know what I mean? Lynch, as good as Lynch is,
yeah,
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Glad, and the comment makes it a hell of a lot of sense. If you look at what Hegarty has done within the 4 years, if you look at what Tom Morrissey's done within the 4 years, has it been more impressive than all of them?
It has. There's no getting away from it, actually. I think we might have to leave Gerard Lynch out of this, good and all as he is.
Gerard Lynch, the mixture of Gerard Hegarty and Cian Lynch, the hybrid.
Did I say that?
Lynch. Yeah.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to. And I think we're going to have to play Gerard Hegarty where he plays. So Cian Lynch has dropped out of the team. We think he's the best hurler in the country when he's fully fit, but he basically hasn't been for a couple of years.
Does Henry go back out to 11?
He might have to. But I think Owen Larkin has to be on this team. But I also think Tom Morrissey has to be on this team. Which makes it stink it up. Somebody's going to lose out here. I'd argue that Gerard Hegarty got hurler of the year in 2020, but it should have been it was my vote at the time that it should have been Tom Morrissey. You know that, I was saying that at the time. And this year, Hegarty hasn't been overly good so far. He's shown signs, but Morrissey has been as good as ever. Now, he's been taken off after about 55 minutes in a couple of games. Not entirely sure why. Maybe it's to get a bounce from the bench or whatever. But to me, I'd actually... then again, you look at Hegarty in the All-Ireland finals and he's scoring... What did he score in the final last year? 1-4, 1-5?
1-5, 1-5, 2-2 and 7 points in the last 3 All-Ireland finals. But has Tom Morrissey been more consistent?
Yeah.
Like I'd probably be very happy with a half hour line of Tom Morrissey, Henry Shefflin, Owen Larkin. We're leaving off. Yeah, I understand, and lads are going to go mad about leaving off Keane Lynch, but I think he hurled 2 of the 4 years. If you get me, you know, he was Keane Lynch for 2 of the 4. He hasn't, you know, and hopefully he will be again. You know.
Yeah. So hurling is hurling, Lynch is Lynch, but unfortunately we have to leave him out. Yeah. Look, I feel a little bit dirty leaving Tom Morrissey out of this. But just on the basis of what Hegarty's done in the All-Ireland finals, you can't but put him in.
Oh, yeah. That's a 50-50 call now. It's a 50-50 call between Morrissey and Hegarty. But what Hegarty has done in All-Ireland finals is huge. He is a big game player. There's no point in saying any different. But Honest Tom is a man for every day.
Did you just call him Honest Tom?
Yeah. Like he's as honest as the day is long. You know what you'll get from him every day. Every day he goes out, he'll empty the tank. So he's probably a little bit hard done by.
He's been wronged in a big way. So then we've got 2 spots left in the full forward line. We've got Aaron Gillan picked in there at number 13. So who's number 14? Who's number 15? By the way, Colin Lyon's blind spot says Morrissey plays 12. He goes in ahead of Larkin. Larkin was hurler of the year in 08. He was unbelievable, and he started all of these big games. He didn't score in all of them. I'm not entirely sure if he scored in all of them. He scored 1-4 against Waterford in 08. He was hurler of the year that day. He scored 4 points against Limerick in 2007. 06, did he score? He didn't score. 2009, what did he score that day? He scored 3 points. I don't know. I think it's impossible to leave out Larkin. Like, we haven't even got into much detail about Larkin, either one of us, because it's almost like a given.
Kind of like you don't need to, almost. You know what I mean? That was probably his. Well, he had a fair few golden spells, but he was hurler of the year within that time as well. I wouldn't be comfortable picking a team without him, being honest.
Would you be like, where does Richie Power come in here? So a point against Tip in the 09 final. I don't know if he was quite that dominant in that game. The year before, he scored 2 points against Waterford in that hammering. The year before that, he scored 4 against Limerick. Did he take over the freeze when Shefflin went off injured? I think it might have. In 7, yeah.
Definitely took over in 10. I can't remember in 7. He probably did.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Wikipedia doesn't make that obvious. And then in the final in 06, he scored a point. So the scoring wouldn't, on the face of it, suggest it. But like I know, we all know that it's about more than just that. The other options, Eddie Brennan. Martin Comerford. But is he more of a half forward?
He got 1-3, didn't he, in the 06 final from the edge of the square. I think he's forever. Now,
he scored 1 point. He scored 1 point that day. Aidan Fogarty scored 1-3.
Sorry. Which game was it where he bounced the ball into the ground?
Tip 09?
No, it was against Cork. It won the All-Ireland finals. Maybe it was 03, was it? It could have been 03.
Certainly wasn't that one.
Taggy definitely deserves to be in the conversation as well. Martin Comerford in 09, I know he came on and got the goal, but he wasn't a guaranteed starter in 09.
No.
You'd be doing well to leave Eddie Brennan off this. He scored 2-4 in the 08 final. He scored 1-5 in the 07 final. Barring the most ridiculous thing in the history of the GAA, Brian Cody get man the match in the 08 final. He would have been man the match in back-to-back All-Ireland finals, which hasn't been done since, or hadn't been done again until our man Hegarty did it in the last 2 years.
He scored 3 points in the 09 final as well, and I think Martin Maher had spoken a few times about how difficult he found him that day.
Yeah. Martin Maher.
Sorry, Brendan. Martin's brother.
Yeah. Like Fast Eddie was still in his pomp at that stage.
So then, 1 spot left over. Who are you looking at? Are we throwing a tip now? We're throwing Callan.
It's like it was perfectly left for him. The the biggest, highest goal scorer in championship history.
Like, who's in the conversation here? You're looking at your Seamus Flanagan's. You're looking. By the way, Peter Casey has barely been mentioned here. He hasn't been mentioned.
Now, to be fair, he scored 5 from play within 25 minutes in the 21 final. Didn't really play last year. He's been a bit on and off this year. at different stages. Graham Mulcahy obviously is kind of back in the fold again, having maybe not played at all or played very little last year. Flanagan again is kind of another one of the, not unheralded, but he just delivers most days. Richie Power do enough within this time.
But who's he up against?
He's up against Seamus Flanagan, I would say. And maybe Martin Comfort probably was just edging out at this stage.
Yeah. And then, so Taggy did very well in that 06 final. Let's see.
I think we're picking a full forward here. Either that or we're putting Galan full forward and we're picking a corner forward.
Well, Galan was a full forward, really. Or is a full forward, really.
But you know what I mean? But just, we're not picking 3 corner forwards. I put it to you that way.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So we'll go Galan. So we are picking a 13 then. So we're going to put Galan in the unusual number 14 jersey.
Yeah. But even though he's parked in the edge of the square most of the time. It's funny, like the comments that come in, like 36 and counting. Pure hurlers v gym hurlers.
Right, almighty.
Who are you thinking here for 14? Like, this is the thing about this is...
Well, 13. But you could play Flanagan as a 13 as well if you liked.
Yeah, we haven't juggled around a team where we're putting Henry in 13 or something and we're putting Keane Lynch in and do you know what I mean? I think
we could if we wanted to.
We've been fairly honest with that and tried to stay true to, there's strict criteria here and we've tried to, stick to them where possible.
Like strict criteria in that we're making it up as we go along.
Something like that.
Joe, let's see how many of each we have so far. So in terms of
this shouldn't matter now. This shouldn't matter.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've already got 8 Kilkenny and 7 Limerick.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that if a Kilkenny man is more deserving that it should be 9-6 Kilkenny. Like, we're not leveling up the books here.
We like to cook the books when we can, though. How was Flanagan done in the finals overall?
He was
very good against Cork. That was 2021. Let's see, 2022 against Limerick, scored 2 points. 2020 All-Ireland hurling final. Let me
Waterford. I have it here in front of me, actually. He scored 3 from play.
Which is no mean feat as well. So... If we're going
for an out-and-out corner forward here, not necessarily out-and-out, does Taggy come into the mix here big time?
Taggy's very good across this period. Now, against Tipperary, obviously the brother was on him and Taggy was taken off that day. But, he has been brilliant. Like, he scored 1-3 the first year against Cork, brilliant that day. A point against Limerick. Then he scored 3 against Waterford when they scored 3-30. And did he score in 09? No, I think he might have got 1 point that day. No, scoreless against Tipperary that day. So in general, yeah, very good across the board. But Flanagan's had a very good year as well, hasn't he? Like, he scored a couple of goals early on when Limerick were not exactly on fire.
I think he's 4 goals in this year's
go back to Flanagan last year, 8 points against Limerick or against Clare. He was in the Hurler of the Year conversation there for a while.
Yeah. I don't see. To me, it's between Richie Power and Flanagan, but to me, Richie's best years may have just come just after this. Maybe 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, and then he obviously got some injuries or whatever. It's Richie Power or Flanagan. It's a time cost, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's funny. It's funny though. Like they're different. They are completely different types of players. Do Flanagan is because Galan is in there. Flanagan, Galan, that kind of 2-man act inside. Does that weigh more in his? I'd probably stump at Richie Power. Being honest with you.
Are we? When we talk about JJ Delaney and Tommy Walsh, is there a little bit of sort of, we're taking their career as a whole rather than that 4-year period? Because Burns has probably another 3 or 4 years in him. Hayes could have another 8 years in him. Like, are we looking a little bit at the careers as a whole of Tommy and JJ and giving them the edge on that basis?
I wouldn't have thought so. Because Tommy was hurler of the year within that time. JJ obviously missed the 6th final, but he played all the games up until that. I remember him doing big damage on Dan at one stage in one of them games as well. I'm not. What's picked is picked.
Well, look, I think history would show that we picked Henry Shefflin at 14 and then moved him out to 11 when it suited us. We moved Galan in as well. Did you see that? Strict criteria says Catnap. Shane mentions a Limerick player. Verney argues for a Kilkenny player instead. Shane Case. 36 and counting says about Flanagan. Cody wouldn't have even called him in for a trial 06-09. But doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about what Kylie and Kinnerkin and these players themselves are doing? That a player like that who, maybe not the silkiest touch in the world when you first saw him come on the scene, but now the guy is running 45 yards and going away from goal. A player has got his hurley completely outstretched and he's firing it over the bar, over their stick.
And he's encouraged to do it.
Yeah, and like people will obviously laugh at the comparison, but like the way Clifford managed to extend his body and his foot out to the side to take a shot, even when someone's looking to block him down, like in a small little way, Flanagan is doing that with his shooting over the shoulder. Like he's a big man in the first place and he's getting full extension.
Yeah, no, listen, he's been unbelievably effective at different stages. He's popped up in games when they've really, really needed him, like last year's Munster final, and he's popped up earlier this year. Flanagan, I'd say, with O'Donovan, and probably Dab Morrissey, stood up in games this year when Limerick's championship was kind of hanging by a thread. I'd still have Richie Power in though.
Okay, so we've got the final team here anyway, which includes Flanagan instead of him. Which I'm sure you're buzzing about, but I just don't think we could have a 9v6 split here.
I don't think that's relevant. I think it's
whoever. Do you know what is relevant though? Like Diarmaid Byrnes is a Terminator at wing back. Like the amount of scores he gets, the amount of catches he gets, all that kind of stuff. It almost feels sacrilege to leave him out. And I do think that in some ways we all just like Tommy Walsh, swashbuckling player. It almost feels like leaving out Ryder overs out of a soccer team, that kind of a thing.
If we were picking the All-Stars, what we do is this. If we were on the All-Star committee, and sorry to the lads that are on the All-Star committee, but Diarmaid Byrnes would be picked number 2, Kyle Hayes would be picked number 4, Tommy would be 5, Hannon would be 6, JJ would be 7, and probably Noel Hickey fullback, and we'd get them all in 5 for one line, and we'd leave out the 2 cornerbacks. That's probably what would happen.
Yeah, it'd be like Dublin footballers at the weekend. They picked 5 corner forwards. Or 5 inside forwards in the forward. So I'm gonna strong arm for once. You always strong arm me. I'm gonna strong arm for once, and we're gonna go with the team like this. Are you okay to sign off on it?
Well, sure. Like we've done a bit of horse trading. I probably got the better of it back the field, and you've probably got the better of it up the top end of the pitch.
Colin Lyons blind spot with a good one here. Byrnes more important to his team than Tommy. Pulled more games out of the fire. That's a fair point. Actually,
unbelievably important to his team, yeah. But like what you said about Tommy earlier, Tommy catching a ball, Tommy delivering a ball, like what was that worth to his team? What was that worth to the crowd even? Like, do you know what I mean? It lifted. It was like a rising tide lifting all boats, like.
Yeah, Catnap he's backing me. Han Shane, stick to your guns. I mean, obviously, I don't want to be talking about either of these teams in positive terms. But I feel I've been shanghaied here in a big way. Anyway, we'll go through the team. Nicky Quaid and Sean Finn, Noel Hickey, Jackie Tyrrell, and Tommy Walsh. Number 6, Declan Hannon. 7 and 8 are JJ Delaney, James Schaff, Fitzpatrick. 2 more Limerick men in Will O'Donoghue and Grode Hegarty, who takes up the first of the half-forward slots. Henry Shefflin and Owen Larkin fill that out, and a full forward line of Eddie Brennan, Aaron Galan, and Seamus Flanagan. Jesus Christ almighty, imagine throwing that team into Leinster, the damage it would do.
We'll have to pick a team to try. Do you know what we could do the next day is pick an alternative 15 and see what would it be like. The 2 wing backs would be Byrnes and Hayes anyway. Brian Hogan centre back. It wouldn't be a bad little team, would it?
Jesus Christ, we nearly should have done that at the start. Huh? The A versus B training games down in Nolan Park, obviously. Yeah.
Well, sure. Kilkenny have the 2 best teams in the country.
Yeah. Hey, and let John Keenan rep.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, so keep the comments coming in, even if you're watching the show after it's been live or whatever. Get your comments in. Name your teams. Tell us why we're wrong. Just don't tell us, oh, you're wrong or you hate.
Yeah, no, don't send that crap. Oh, you're wrong. How did you not have him in? Give us the reason why X should be in and why he shouldn't be in.
Conor Heaney says, if you said Tommy, lads, know who you're on about. Imagine saying Diarmaid, lads wouldn't have a clue. Say no more. Well, like there was a period there in Kilkenny where surnames were superfluous.
Yeah.
You were just talking about your Tommies and Ted.
If you say Byrnes, though, everyone knows who you're talking about. Byrnesy.
Yeah. True enough. We didn't talk about the Tailteann Cup final. Meath beat down 213 to 14 points. That goal that Ronan Jones scored in the first half, I'm convinced that it hit his knee rather than hitting off the defender. I can't remember exactly who it was, maybe Pat Haverin. Obviously, Meath were not going well at the time. They were struggling for scores throughout the first half. And Jack Flynn, who ended up with 4 from play, he was really good. He put that ball in there, came down, hit Ronan Jones. It was the boost that they needed, wasn't it? Because Meath were not going well. They actually went from the 20th minute to the 44th minute without scoring from play when Cathal Hickey finally put one over. And then they just hit their straps from then on and deservedly won.
It was funny. Down started much better. They were 4-1 up, and could have been 5-1 up. There was a point. It was very, very borderline to hit wide from distance. It should have been 5-1 up, but it's almost that goal came, and we chat about it in a second. One of the luckiest goals I would say of all time. But it totally stunned Down. It totally stunned them, knocked them back completely. And even though Meath didn't score for that prolonged spell, they went in level at half time, and they just came out a different side. I'd say probably from about 45 minutes onwards. A load of kind of new enough Meath faces, the likes of Jack Flynn. Jack O'Connor came on and got 1-2. Jack Flynn kicked 4 points, I think, from 4 shots in the second half. And it was even his ball in that hit off Jones that ended up in the net. So he even had the assist there. And every time he scored, he had the fist up in the air. And you could just actually, there was a fairly significant Meath crowd there. And they were all getting behind him. And but we talk about the lads that got the scores and that. But Meath's turnovers and tackling was the winning. That was the winning of the game. I don't know how many times they broke Down's hearts with turning over ball around the middle of the park, even around the 45-yard line. So you had a Down team coming into this who'd beaten Cavan in the quarterfinal and then scored 8 goals against Laois in the semi-final. They created a couple of goal chances. I think Liam Kerr had a gilt-edge one before half time and he blazed it over. But Meath really shut them out really, really well. And while they had a couple of lads up the other end of the pitch that got big scores when they needed them, to me, it was the defensive effort that won the day for them. And a lot of people would say after about that Centenary Cup success in '84, that was the springboard for Meath going on to do great things under Sean Boylan, who was involved with this team as well. I don't know if you saw that picture going around of Colin O'Rourke and Sean Boylan. You forget how small Sean Boylan is. Just a picture of the two of them on the pitch after. But there'd be some hopes in Meath maybe that success would be some sort of a springboard for the future again. But I have to say, there's one player in particular be particularly delighted for. Donald Keoghan has soldiered in bad Meath teams, and he's been their best player by a mile. And I looked at him at different stages the other night. He emptied the tank the other night again, and just for him to raise significant silverware in Croke Park, their first, I think, is Meath's first silverware to lift in Croke Park since that tainted 2010 Leinster title. But for Keoghan to get his hands on silverware was very, very deserved. No, few players have put in a career like he put in, far away from Broadway, kind of in the shadows, and it was great that he got the limelight and got what he deserved.
Okay, and then the thing that Colin O'Rourke said afterwards, his post-match interview, when he says "Nunc bibendum," that was so. No. But when you see bib, I was thinking maybe it's imbibe. You know, the way drinking is to imbibe or whatever. Maybe that's the kind of the root of the meaning of the word there. But that was fair speak to come out with. And how pre-prepared was that, if at all?
He knew. He was up for a press conference during the week and he started going on about Wellington at Waterloo. So he likes these kind of obscure kind of references. But I think they're actually having something. Is it tonight in Park Tailteann? So I'm sure they've been enjoying themselves the last couple of days. And what a way for their season to finish. Offaly dumped them out of the Leinster Championship. Looked like their season's in tatters. They win 6 games in a row, blood a heap of new players. And all of a sudden, they're still Division 2 next year. They're already in the All-Ireland Championships for next year. It's a completely different outlook for next year already looking in. Something I saw as well, Shane, I'd never seen it before. Correct me if I'm wrong. The 2 sponsors of the 2 teams involved, so Bective Stud, owned by Noel and Valerie Moore, and I think it's EOS Solutions. They're the 2 sponsors of the 2 teams that are in the final. There was hoarding down at the bottom of the Cusick and the bottom of the Hogan with both of those sponsors on it, which I don't know if that's a regular thing, but I just thought it was a really nice touch. If you stump up whatever you stump up to sponsor a county team, isn't it nice to get that sort of recognition in Croke Park on the biggest day? I'd never seen it done before, because a lot of sponsors don't get banged for their buck, and maybe no one else saw it, and I was the only one that noticed it, but I just thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, okay. Then the All-Ireland Junior Football Final was on over the weekend. New York beat Kilkenny 13 points to 119. Obviously, Kilkenny had their success last year. For New York now, to have it all homegrown players over there, like, that's a huge success for them. So you congratulate them. And Shane McElligott, he got 6 points, 4 of those from frees. So huge win for them. Then the All-Ireland Ladies Football quarterfinals were on over the weekend. I was watching Kerry against Meath, and that was all about the conditions there. Kerry had the wind in the first half. They put up a nice little score. Meath were chasing throughout the second half, and I suppose they just couldn't quite convert their chances. Cork beat Armagh 14 points to 2-6. Mayo saw off Galway 10 points to 1-6. And Dublin went up to Donegal and had a fairly comprehensive win, 3-12 to 6 points. Geez, there was some amount going on over the weekend, and to be honest, we got some amount out of that combined team as well.
Yeah, we did. Obviously, Meath are dethroned. That's kind of been a tumultuous kind of a season. Change of managers, Davy Nelson leaving, Jenny Rispin taking over. It was going to take something fairly special for them to go down to Kerry and pull off a result against what has been the best team in the country so far this year. Kerry, league champions. They've hit a crazy amount of goals so far, and it's their favourites of what's left. I think it's Dublin Cork on one side, and it's Kerry Mayo on the other side. So Dublin Cork have had some great battles down through the years, and I'd fancy Kerry to come through the other side. And to me, they're all Ireland favourites at the moment. But yeah, there was a fair whack of action. It's winding down now, but like, sure, we've the greatest to me. It's it's one of the greatest days in the calendar, isn't it? Outside of my own birthday. It's the greatest day in the calendar next Sunday.
I don't think at our age and your age that we celebrate birthdays anymore. We welcome them.
No, what's the opposite of celebrate? Commiserate. When birthdays come around, that's kind of what you do. Yeah, you don't tell anyone.
Yeah,
you don't tell anyone. But I've gone to the stage now where I'm telling people, they're like, "Oh, what age are you?" I've gone to it. I never thought I'd be like it, but like, 37 in October, when you're talking in hurling terms, because it's like, you never say Teacher Reid is 35, he's 36 in November.
Okay, so that's it from the show today. A reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame, you'll get 15% off. We do have those live shows. If you're looking to do a fundraiser for your club, and pretty much every club needs to be raising money these days, we're doing one in O'Loughlin Gales this Thursday as a preview to the All-Ireland final. Eddie Brennan, Niall Horan, Brian Hogan, Brian Dowling, Mark Bergen, Cyril Farrell, they're all going to be there. So if you want us to host one of those for you, you can email us at events@ourgame.ie. Also, if you want to get the audio podcast, that's going to be at patreon.com/ourgame. Do you have a big old smirk on your face?
I can confirm that it will not be Niall Horn, it will be Niall Mourne. But he'll also be pleased to meet you, no doubt. If you're in O'Loughlin Gales. And quickly before we go, go of the week. To me,
go of the week.
Yeah, to me, I was covering the game, and he just completely turned the game. Jack Flynn was unbelievable for me in that second half. Everything he did nearly went over the bar in the second half. And to me, he was the win and lose in that Tailteann Cup final.
Look, it's got to be David Clifford for me.
Listen, not just go of the week, maybe the go of them all.
Yeah, the go to them all. Okay, that's it from the show. As I said, if you want to get the audio podcast, patreon.com/ourgame. We'll chat to you later in the week, Michael.
Cheers, Shane.